Welcome to the Foundations of Learning podcast. I hope to inspire you to actively participate in your child's learning journey, fostering a love for knowledge and nurturing the skills necessary for success in a rapidly changing world.
Welcome back to the Foundations of Learning. I am your host, Shaylee Flint. Today, I'm going to answer the question, when teaching my child to read, what should I teach first? Now, before we get started on this, I do want to preface this by saying that there are certain parts of the brain that do need to be developed before we even learn to read. If your child is under 7, it's going to be hard for them to achieve fluent reading. This does not mean that they can't learn the basics of segmenting and blending and reading very small words. However, fluent reading is most likely going to be hard to achieve before the age of 7. And the reason I say that is because when our brain is developing, we do have to have a part of our brain developed, which is called the word processing area. And that's generally not developed enough until about the age of 7 for fluent reading. And I did see this a lot with my first graders, is that even if I had a kid that was really good at reading, fluent reading didn't really start to click until about middle of year for a first grader. And then from there, they really started to blossom into their fluent reading. But it's just because there is a part of their brain that's not quite developed. However, there are other kids that develop differently and mature differently, and they might be able to achieve somewhat of a fluent reading before age of 7, but just kind of keep that in mind, as well as your child does have to have a good memory in order to learn to read and write. When they are younger, I really would focus on just like fostering a love of reading with them, read with them, get them excited about books, teach them about the concepts of print, right? Which is the, front of the book, back of the book, authors, illustrators, things like that. Like, can you point to a word? Talking about, there's spaces between words, and this is a word, and this is a period and question mark, and so on, right? So like really just doing that, practicing like memory stuff. So playing memory games and things like that to really get their memory working, working on their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills. All of these things are going to be so important that they develop before we even learn to read. So if your child is super young, play with them, talk with them, read with them, and they're going to be good to go. But I am going to be answering the question, when teaching my child to read, what should I teach first? So first, I want to talk about phonemic awareness. This is really the gateway to success, or phonological awareness. There are many skills in phonological awareness that your child needs, which is word awareness, syllable segmentation, and phonemic awareness. I'm going to just talk about phonemic awareness because that really is the cornerstone to segmenting and blending words. So with phonemic awareness, you have blending and you have segmenting. If I was to have my child practice blending, I would tell them the sounds and then they would have to tell me the word. So for example, I would say the sounds are ul-ap. What's the word? And they would have to tell me lap. If I was segmenting, I would tell them the word and they would have to break it into their sounds. So for example, I would say, can you tell me all the sounds in the word hit? And they would say, it. Now, you can start this skill as early as you deem appropriate for your child. However, I would suggest teaching them like word awareness first, syllable awareness, and then you can get into phonemic awareness. So make sure they have word awareness and syllable awareness first, and then do that. And so, like I said, in those early years, you could practice rhyming, syllable awareness, word awareness. And if you don't know how to practice those, I do have a YouTube video. I will put that link in the show notes so you can check that out. So the next thing that you're going to do is you want to connect those sounds to letters. And you're probably like, duh, obviously I need to teach my child the letters, right? But it's more than just teaching them the letters. You want to make sure that they know the name, that they know the sound, that they can differentiate between the uppercase and lowercase letters, and then even how to form those letters. So when we're connecting the sounds to the letters as well, it's important that you are practicing or talking about what is happening in your mouth, with your tongue, with your teeth, with your voice box. All of these things are going to be super important for them to be able to say the sound correctly, right? So really thinking about yourself and how you say these sounds. And if you don't know how to say those sounds, I do have a YouTube video where I talk about letters, and you can go check that out as well. I say each sound for you so that you know how to correctly say those sounds. It's actually in my syllable types video, so go ahead and check that out. When you are teaching these two skills, which is phonemic awareness and teaching letters, which are going to be the very foundations of what your child needs, you can use different manipulatives, movements, and games and things to add play into their learning. I did just do a podcast on 15 engaging ways to practice the alphabet. So if you're interested, you can go ahead and go check that out so that you can incorporate play and movement in teaching those letters. However, when we are talking about phonemic awareness, you can make it a concrete method. And so you can use blocks, or you can use Cheerios or dinosaurs or cars or whatever they want to do to represent those sounds. And so when we are practicing that segmentation and that blending, you would first start off with, like I said, if I was like, tell me all the sounds in KIT, right? Maybe they move a car for every sound. It, and they're moving their car. Maybe they have 3 cars and they're moving it each time, right? Or for example, if I'm having them blend a sound, maybe I get a car and I would say the sounds are it, what's the word? And they drive their car across as they say KIT, right? To represent that we're blending those sounds back together. So you can use a concrete method to practice this. However, you don't have to do that. And by the way, I didn't even mention this. These skills are auditory that I was just talking about. So if I'm talking about sounds and words, we're doing it in the auditory form right now. We're not matching those to the letters because we might not have mastered our letters yet. And so if you haven't mastered your letters yet, you can still practice this phonemic awareness strategy of breaking words into their sounds or having them put the sounds back together to make a word, but it's all in the auditory form. You can also use your body when you're doing this. So you could have them tap their arm, you could have them jump up and down, however you want to do that. But just getting that movement is going to help them to remember how to do it. And also it just gives that sound an object that it goes with, because eventually those letters will be represented with those sounds. Like I had said, when we are doing letters, it's important that you talk about how your mouth is being formed and what your tongue is doing and your voice box is doing. It's also important that you are talking about, like I said, the upper and lowercase. I love to do sorts for this. So they have to sort their uppercase and their lowercase. They have to write the letters, whether that be in the air, whether that be in a sensory bin, whether that be building it with Legos. But they need to know how to form those letters, and then also finding that letter in text. So I have silly sentences that go with each letter, and then they have to go through and they have to find the letter that we have learned. This just helps them to differentiate the letter, and then also gives them a reason for why we are practicing these letters, which is that they're going to be finding or using these letters to make words in the future. Teaching your child to read does not have to be a daunting task. And if you just invest like even 5 minutes a day employing these strategies, you are going to be laying the foundations for your child to become a fluent reader and writer. And like I said, if you need more ways to practice, I did just do a podcast about the 15 engaging ways to master the alphabet. So go ahead and check that out. And then I also do have, if you want a interactive way to do this with a curriculum, I did just put out my reading mysteries curriculum, which goes over all of the things I was just talking about with phonemic awareness, learning our letters. It provides you with a 250-page PDF that also has games and multisensory activities that you can incorporate. So you don't have to do much of the thinking there. You can just play these games with your child that are within this curriculum. So if you want to check that out, I will leave a link down below as well. But as always, I hope that this podcast was helpful in understanding what you need to teach your child to read in the very beginning stages and setting those foundations of phonemic awareness and teaching letters. I hope that you have future success in your learning and your child's learning, and we will see you next time.